This time we'll call the meeting to order. Identification.
Father, we thank you for all that you're doing, the things that we can see, the things that we can't see. We trust you and we thank you that you are Lord of everything. For your blessing on this meeting, your wisdom on every decision that is made tonight for your glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
No, they're not. Move to approve the agenda.
So moved by Commissioner Hutchinson, second by Commissioner Belden to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to proclamations. World Polio Day proclamation.
Okay, Commissioners, we have Dana Brewer here to represent the Rotary Club of Concordia for the Polio Proclamation. And once we're done talking about it and reading about it, I'd like to pause for a quick photo opportunity.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, City Finance Director, City Clerk, City Manager, other city employees, and other citizens in attendance. Appreciate this opportunity to talk to you about Polio Plus. I'm Dana Brewer. You know me as a local attorney and a business neighbor just down the street. It was my honor to serve as district governor of Rotary District 5680, comprised of 60 Rotary clubs and approximately 2,800 Rotarians in the western two-thirds of Kansas and the Oklahoma Panhandle for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2021. Currently, I serve as the district's polio prevention chair. Polio is a crippling and paralyzing disease which has been afflicting humans for thousands of years. However, like another serious disease, smallpox, polio can be totally eradicated from our world. In 1979, Rotary International, an organization which takes action to help and serve others in need, undertook the immunization of all of the children of the Philippines. And we were successful. Over the years since, Rotary has collaborated with the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and other health organizations to provide Polio Plus, which is an immunization program for polio, killer measles, and several other of the most dreaded childhood diseases. That immunization consists of simply placing 2 drops of the vaccine on the tongues of the children to protect them from those diseases. This year, the Concordia Rotary Club's project for World Polio Day, the public, including other service club members, are invited to bring your own lunch to a picnic at 12:30 at the shelter house in the park on Sunday, October 24th. The event is in honor and memory of the late Dr. Paul Nelson and his wife Peggy. Dr. Paul was our Rotary District's Polio Plus chair for many years. He traveled throughout Kansas, raising awareness of polio, the need to remove it from our world, and raising funds and recruiting volunteers to make that happen. Because of the efforts of the Nelsons and millions of others and countless hours volunteered by Rotarians and local citizens worldwide, funded by billions of dollars raised by Rotarians and their communities, often more than matched by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, polio has now been eliminated in 99.9% of the world. There are only 2 countries in which it is still present, Afghanistan and Pakistan. And the number of cases over the last year, or since the first of the year, have been very few. So we're very hopeful. Our club's project is simple and it's virtually painless. We don't even have to get a shot. Okay. All we have to do is reach into our pocket. What we're doing is we've got about $1,500 that was donated in honor of Dr. Paul and Peggy. And we're working to match that with Rotarians donations and community donations. If we match that, we'll have $3,000. Then the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will match that 2 for 1. So they'll add another $6,000 to our $3,000. Now we have raised at least $9,000. For every $3 we raise, we can immunize one of those precious children throughout the world. So $9,000 will immunize 3,000 children around the world. We think that's pretty significant, and we hope the community does too. And we really appreciate the opportunity to have the commission consider a proclamation in honor of World Polio Day. So basically, we're here asking all of our neighbors in the community and throughout Cloud County to share and to serve in honor of Dr. Paul and Peggy, who served all of us in so many ways. Thank you for your time.
This time I'll read the Rotary International Proclamation. Whereas Rotary is a global network of neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who unite and take action to create lasting change in communities across the globe. And whereas the Rotary motto, service above self, inspires members to provide humanitarian service, follow high ethical standards, and promote goodwill and peace in the world. And whereas Rotary in 1985 launched Polio Plus, and in 1988 helped establish the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, which today includes the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, UNICEF, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to immunize the children of the world against polio. And whereas polio cases have dropped by 99.9% since 1988, and the world stands on the threshold of eradicating the disease. And whereas today, Rotary has contributed more than $2.2 billion and countless volunteer hours to protecting nearly 3 billion children in 122 countries. And whereas Rotary is working to raise an additional $50 million per year, which would be leveraged for maximum impact by an additional $100 million annually from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And whereas these efforts are providing much needed operational support, medical staff, laboratory equipment, and educational materials for health workers and parents. And whereas in addition, Rotary has played a major role in decisions by donor governments to contribute more than $10 billion to the effort. And whereas there are over 1.2 million Rotary members in 36,000 clubs throughout the world that sponsor service projects to address such critical issues as poverty, disease, hunger, illiteracy, and the environment in their local communities and abroad. Therefore, I, Charles P. Lamberts, Mayor of the City of Concordia, Kansas, do hereby proclaim October 24th as World Polio Day in Concordia, and encourage all citizens to join me, the Concordia Rotary Club and Rotary International, in the fight for a polio-free world.
Thank you. I might just mention that our district last fiscal year, by reason of these different matches and so on, was able to raise $528,000 for Polio Plus. So we're going to take another go at it, see what we can do.
So if someone were to direct funds towards this cause, would they just contact a Rotarian and arrange that with
And they
them?
can also bring it to the city office, I understand.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and collect donations through City Hall or at the Dropbox. Put the donation in an envelope and label it Rotary Polio Plus, and we'll collect it through 4:00 p.m. next Friday. So people have a week to go ahead and decide if they want to donate.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are we able to pause real quick for a photo op? And I don't know if we printed out a print, but we can go paperless and just hold up an iPad with the proclamation. Would that work? You can hold yours. You got yours up there. You don't have any, go ahead and stand up here with that. And I'll- So Ashley, do you want to join as a Rotary or not, or? All right, say cheese.
Kurt.
Scoot this way. Gotta get both flags in, sorry guys. Wait, one more step. One more. Okay, I'll change the camera. All right, here we go, ready? 1, 2, 3, cheese. Beautiful, thank you very much.
Moving on to public comments. This is a time where citizens are encouraged to speak publicly. We request that you state your name and address, speak respectfully, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Marjorie Staveley and I live here in Concordia, right over here at 135 West 8th Street. And I am here to see if it would be possible, if I could use the green post where the stop sign is on 8th and Washington Street for this holiday season. I know it's early, but it's better to find out early than too late. And I do have an alternative. If I would not be able to use all it is a couple signs where it says Santa, and then you've got the stop sign up here and then here. If that would be,
I think that's probably not something, there might be some restrictions that we have just with right away and whatnot, but something we could probably look into and have someone reach out to you and let you know what the answer would be for that.
okay,
Does that sound fair?
very fair.
Okay.
Okay,
If you
thank
might
you.
just leave your contact information, that way we can make sure, cross our T's and dot our I's. Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the discussion agenda, the wastewater treatment plant phase 2 project update.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, staff. Nice to be here. I was afraid I was going to be slightly late, but I went just right at the speed limit, of course. For those of you that don't know me, I know there's a few new faces around. So I am Sarah Unruh. I'm with PEC, which is Professional Engineering Consultants. We're based in Wichita. And we've been working with the city of Concordia since 2015 regarding wastewater issues and things at the wastewater treatment plant. And so I wanted to come this evening and kind of give you a little bit of update on our current project. And for those of you that are kind of new to what we're doing, give you a little bit of background of how we got here. So that you can kind of understand a little bit about where we've come from and where we're at. And then if you've got any questions at any time during my little presentation, please feel free to let me know. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so you can go ahead and awesome. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background about PEC, for those of you that might not know, we are a full service multidisciplinary engineering firm, which basically means we have everything but architects on our staff. So in the yellow box there, it just kind of talks about the different things that we do. But we have 3 different departments. We have facilities, civil and field services. So we basically cover, like I said, every aspect of engineering design. We don't have architects on our staff, but we have everybody else. And so all the folks that have been working on things for your wastewater treatment plant have all been out of our Wichita office, including our field services folks who've come up here and punched some holes with our geotech crew to figure out what the soils are like. Our survey crew's been up here to do some survey work, and then all of our designers that have worked on things have been out of our Wichita office. That is our headquarters, but we also have offices in Topeka, Lawrence, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Fort Collins. So A little bit of background about me. I've been with PEC almost 15 years, it'll be 15 years in March. But I've been doing the engineering thing for about 21 years now. I serve as our water and wastewater team lead in Wichita. And so all the water and wastewater work comes through my group. All right. So we'll talk a little bit specifically now about your project. So I want to give a little bit of background in phase 2. So this did start with a study and then a phase 1 improvement that we finished a few years ago. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about how we got to where we're at with phase 2. Give you kind of a current status update of what's going on with the project right now. We'll talk a little bit about construction schedule and then of course where we're at with the construction budget. Okay, so to give you a little bit of background, the first thing we did was a study. So back in August of 2015, we provided a study to the city where we had looked at just the wastewater treatment plant as a whole and said, what are the things that we need to be dealing with from a equipment basis, from a process basis? What are the regulatory things that are coming up that we're going to need to deal with? And out of that study, we came up with a 2-phased approach to address the most immediate concerns. So the first was the phase 1 improvements, which like I said, were those kind of immediate needs. And those were completed in 2018. And in that gray box up there, you can see the things that we did. So we replaced some equipment that was either broken or aged, which included the grit removal system up front. And that just takes the grit out of the system so it doesn't destroy pumps and other equipment farther down the line. The clarifiers, which basically are a settling basin, essentially where the solids settle out. We replaced the mechanism in the old one. One had been replaced a few years before, and it was just time to replace the innards of the other. So we did that. And then that big round kind of racetrack looking basin down there on the southwest corner of the plant is where all the magic happens in the wastewater treatment plant. And the aeration system in there needed some fixing. So we fixed that to make sure that continued to process waste the way it was supposed to. There are also blowers that are part of that system, and they're exceedingly noisy. And when you stood up there next to them, you could not hear yourself think, let alone anyone else talk. And so we put enclosures over those to protect them, and then also to make it easier for operators to be able to be up there in that space. We put in a new pump station that functions to return some of that flow within the process to keep things moving. And then we installed the first piece of the biosolids handling system. So in a wastewater treatment plant, you have a liquid stream and a solid stream. That's how the process works. And in that solid stream, the city was taking that and land applying it. And we went in and looked at different options of what to do with that and ended up with what we call a biosolid system, which basically is kind of like I liken it to like a salad spinner. It basically dewaters the sludge so that you end up with more of a cake. And that's what we did in phase 1. And then I was here I looked back January of 2020. It's been that long since I've been in front of you as a whole body in person. And we talked about what the next step would look like. We kind of looked through 2 different options, one of which was just to take that cake and set it out basically on a concrete pad and let it dry out naturally, and then continue to land apply it the way that it was done all along. Or put in a second piece to that biosolid system that allows you to do something that means going to Class A biosolids. And the purpose behind that is that anyone can use it. So you can use it, local landscape companies can use it. I could come take it and put it on my lawn, which is great fertilizer. So we talked about those different options. We talked about cost, we talked about operations, we talked about long-term benefits. And ultimately what was decided was to go ahead and put in that extra equipment to go ahead and get to that Class A level of biosolids. And so hence our phase 2 improvements of where we're at now. There are some other things that are involved in that too. So the biosolids system expansion is the last one on that list. But the other things that we're doing are addressing some of the other issues that were identified as needing to be dealt with, just not immediately in phase 1. So the other items that we're working on with this project are the influent pumps. So all the flow comes into that first pump station, and that pump station basically provides the head for everything else for it to flow all the way through the rest of the plant. So those influent pumps are a very critical piece of the process, and they are just very aged and need a replacement. So replacing those. We're also putting variable frequency drives on those pumps, which allows them to modulate their speed based on the flow. So I'm not running at 100% if I don't need that much because the flow is lower. And then we're putting in a new flow meter to allow for real accurate measurement of what flow is being processed through the plant. We're also replacing the electrical power feed into the plant, which means new main disconnect and new main electrical gear. And then we're also putting in a new generator, replacing the one that's there right now, and putting in a new automatic transfer switch. So in the event that power goes out, it automatically switches over to that new generator. So that's kind of give you a little bit of background. So then I thought it would kind of show you what some of these things are, so you can kind of wrap your head around it. So on the influent pumps, what's on the left is actually our plan sheet, our design plan sheet for the job. But what it shows you is that we're basically replacing all of the pumps that are in this kind of semicircle piece of the basement of the influent pump station. The wet well, where all the flow comes, is on the other side of these pumps. But we're replacing all of the pumps and all the piping that's down in there. The pictures that you see there are the existing pumps and piping. So you can see they've served their time very, very well. But now it's time to go ahead and get all of those replaced. So that's the first part of the project. The second part has to do with the electrical system. So in that influent pump station, which is a nice round building, all this main electrical gear sits up on that first floor. And so we're going to be redoing all of that and putting in new gear. And again, it's served its time, and it's time to go ahead and replace that electrical gear in those electrical systems. So that's another part of our project. And then this slide shows you the generator. So it shows you kind of the little building where that generator is currently located. So we're going to be taking that generator out, putting in a new one. That big tree will have to come out, unfortunately, but the tree will come out and we'll put a nice fuel tank there to make sure that when that generator does need to run, there's plenty of fuel available for it to run for as long as it needs to. Okay. And then the biggest piece of what we're doing here is that biosolids handling system. So what you see here is, again, our plan sheet that kind of shows how the system works. I'm going to try and kind of walk you through it a little bit. So on the left-hand side, and I put some pictures in here to hopefully help explain it a little bit. On the far left side of this is the existing building. So it's the existing administration building that's there. On the far left side is the salad spinner, like I called it earlier, that we put in phase one. That's what the picture is below that. And currently the way that this system works is it has an auger that just would go outside and dump into a truck. What we're going to do is take that auger and turn it around. And we're going to go all the way through to the other end of the building and add in some additional space in that building and add in these additional pieces of equipment. So the existing building that's out there, we're actually adding about 20 feet on to the north end of that to accommodate all of this new equipment. So what you see on the right side, we actually went to, I can't remember the name of the town. It's in Nebraska. Columbus, thank you. Columbus, Nebraska. We took a nice little road trip to Columbus, Nebraska, and looked at this system that they had installed up there before we went forward with anything to make sure it was really still something the city was interested in doing. And so the picture that you see up there on the right is actually their line tower. So the way this process works, we kind of get a lot of that water out of there in the first piece of the process. And then in order for it to be Class A, we basically have to heat it up to kill all the rest of the stuff that's in there to be able to land apply it anywhere. And so the process goes through, we add some chemicals into it, it all mixes it up really nice, and then it pumps it through a reactor. And what that reactor does is get it up to the temperature that it needs to kill all those extra, kill everything else that's in there to make sure that it's safe to be able to put out. And so this picture here is the facility in Nebraska that shows their line silo. Yours is going to be a little different. Yours will actually be elevated because we'll have an auger that will come out of the bottom of that into the building. But the same kind of concept, that's a piece of the process. And what I've shown over there on the far right is actually out of your design plans that shows it's going to be elevated up in the air a little bit. And there's an auger that will come out of there and drop directly into the hopper in the middle to where all that stuff will get mixed up together. Okay. And this just shows you the parts and pieces of the process, again, kind of in a side view. So on the far left is your equipment that's already installed. We put that in as part of phase one. We're going to take that auger, like I said, and turn it around. And then it's going to drop into that hopper. And these two photos are actually from the facility in Nebraska. So it won't be give you kind of an idea of what these things look like. So the hopper in the middle basically is just a hopper where the sludge comes in one side, the chemicals get fed in the top, and it all gets mixed up in there. and there's a twin mixer system in there. And then the bottom part of that is actually a pump. They're more like a concrete pump, since this stuff is pretty thick, obviously. And then it pumps it through this cone, which is the silver bullet looking deal on the right side. And that's kind of where everything happens. That's where the heating happens. The chemicals help with that process, but everything happens in there. And then at the end, it discharges out the chute, which you can kind of see in the picture, discharging out the building. And you can see in the drawing above that that'll be the same way. It'll discharge out and it'll discharge up high enough so that it could be discharged directly into a truck to be hauled off to, wherever it's going to be stored on the site at the wastewater plant so that it can be used by the public. Okay. Any questions about the process? I'm sure everybody is super excited about sludge. So. Okay. So current status update to give you an idea of where we're at with the project. So the contract was awarded to Walters Morgan, which is a construction company out of Manhattan. It was awarded in December of 2020, and we issued our first notice to proceed for procurement in February of 2021. The reason we did that is because this equipment takes a long time to build and to get going. So rather than give the contractor a whole bunch of days to do everything, we said, okay, we're going to give you a notice to proceed here to start the procurement process. And then once that's done, then we'll get a construction, and then you got this much time for actual construction. So we issued that first notice to proceed for procurement in February of this year. And then we issued our notice to proceed number 2 for actual construction activities. We issued it was October 13th is what it was dated, and the contractor started on site yesterday. So they showed up on site to start mobilizing and get their feet under them of what's going on at the site. And I got an email from the contractor today that they're going to be starting work next week on the building addition. So they'll start moving some dirt around and starting to get that slab placed for the new building addition. One thing that was not part of the original project that is now going to be part of what this contractor is going to do is replacement of the UV units. And so the UV units are the last process and the last piece of the wastewater treatment plant process. What happens is the liquid stream is fully treated, and then it goes through the UV units as the disinfection step before it's discharged to the river. You currently have 2 units, identical units there. And a few months ago, one of them decided to break. And so it was decided that we needed to look at replacing those and going ahead and getting both of those replaced. So we worked with our contractor on this project to come up with options, see what we could do to minimize the impact, but go ahead and get things taken care of. So the manufacturer came up with the option to basically just replace the insides and replace the interior parts of those and put in new control panels. And so that process is underway. We added that to the project. It was added as a change order. We'll talk about budget here in a minute, but that was added as a change order to the project. Wasn't something that was an issue at the very beginning, but since it has happened, we definitely need to take care of it. So since you had a contractor already on board to be out there working, made the most sense to go ahead and just add this into their project so that it could be completed in the quickest kind of time frame. Okay, so now we'll talk about budget. So the original project bid price was just over $3 million. It was under our engineer's estimate of $3.4 million. That total $3 million project includes $100,000 of contingency allowance. And we've started using this contingency allowance to kind of help with those little things that are going to come up. We do the best that we can off the information we have available, and staff knows a whole lot about your facility, but sometimes we run into something that nobody's expecting. And so we have that $100,000 of contingency allowance that's already built into the bid so that we can address things like that as they come up without having to do change orders and all of that. So it included that $100,000 contingency allowance. Also included $15,000 for flood insurance allowance. When we were talking with Bruno about requirements in the floodplain, noted that the contractor was going to need some insurance to work in there. Our building extension just barely gets within that floodplain line, so we wanted to make sure that everything was covered. So from some conversations we had with our insurance agent and some other folks during the bid time, we put in that allowance of $15,000. We actually came in with a certificate a week or so ago, and it was only $1,508. So what we will do is when we go through the pay application process and we process that final pay application when the project's done, that will come back as a credit to the city. So you only pay the city, or the city will only pay the contractor for the 1588. So that difference will come back in credit. The other thing is with that $100,000 contingency allowance, that's totally up to the city to utilize. So whatever is not utilized out of that contingency, same thing. We'll pull that off as a change order at the very end to get the price down to what we've actually spent in the job. We did go ahead and make the decision, city made the decision to go ahead and include the UV replacement as a change order to the job rather than utilizing that contingency. It was over the contingency, so it would have wiped that out completely. And so instead of doing that and with some other financing discussions, it was decided to go ahead, put that as a change order to the job and leave that $100,000 contingency intact as we go through the job, since we really hadn't gotten a chance to get started on any sort of construction work yet, to make sure that that was still available.
And commissioners, this is the conversation that we had about whether we should go ahead and use kind of, I'm gonna call it the float that was within those bonds that we had, which is the difference between the engineer's estimate and the actual bids, or if we should use the ARPA funds, because that's about when that came out. And Commissioner, she directed us to use those ARPA funds instead. So that's where the change order funding is coming from, that pot of money, not the bonds.
So that brings our total current price right now to $3,169,964. And again, we have that $100,000 contingency that we'll continue to kind of monitor. And that's tracked separately. So when the contractor puts in pay applications each month, we have, the original bid items, and that is a separate one that we track, so that anything again that's not used will come back to the city as the final pay application. And now we'll talk about schedule. So like I talked about, the contractor will be starting on that building expansion next week. The UV piping, so in order to build this new building, we needed to reroute that UV piping that comes out of the building and goes to your outfall of the creek. And so that UV piping will be rerouted starting towards the end of October. And then those UV unit replacements, the first one will be done in December. I think between Thanksgiving and Christmas, they'll do that one, get that one up and running and checked out, and we're all good with that. And then they'll do the second one in January. The biosolids equipment, like I said, is a very long lead time to get out here. So it'll actually be arriving at the end of February. It'll be on site. So that's why they're starting with the building now and get all of that ready to go, so they have a place to put that equipment. And then the startup of that equipment is scheduled right now for June of 2022. The influent pumps, try to get those here as early as possible, but again, with everything going on and just the amount of time it takes for pumps, those will be here in December. So they'll start doing all of that work in December, January timeframe, and the actual pump replacements themselves are scheduled for just after the first of the year, so that by March, all of that work should be completed as well. And then the generator installation is currently scheduled for February. And total project completion, when everything will be done, wrapped up, and contractor offsite is in July.
And Jeremy, did you want to jump in real quick? The influent pumps are being replaced, but we ran into that hiccup. And I think we informed you about that too, that we had to have one of the pumps rebuilt. So we're operating on how many pumps right now?
2 pumps.
2 pumps. So we do have some redundancy in there.
How much of the schedule is weather dependent?
This one's not too bad, since most stuff is inside, as long as they can get the building constructed in a reasonable time. Most of the other work is indoors. So this one shouldn't be too bad once they get that structure up. And since they're starting on this next week, I don't have the schedule for me, I apologize, of when that is supposed to be completed. But since they've got equipment starting in February, I suspect that should be done by the end of the year, that they're ready to put that equipment in.
Good.
So shouldn't be too bad, I don't think, on this one. Like I said, the UV piping, outdoors, are gonna be doing that first. UV units obviously are all inside. The electrical gear, most of that's, inside, the generator. So and I'm not too concerned about, weather issues with this. One of the other things we are doing, since you brought up weather, one of the other things that's on this project that I failed to mention is the grit system that we put in with phase 1. We're actually going to blanket that and provide some heat trace equipment that are kind of basically a blanket that is custom fit for that, to heat that in the wintertime. So that will be installed before it gets pulled this year, so.
Would it be, do you share this presentation? Or do we have this presentation?
Yes, Amy's got it.
You want me to send it out to you?
That'd be great. I would, not even gonna act like I can remember this, so it'd be helpful to have a resource to reference if somebody
Well,
wants.
I am gonna come back and quiz you.
Well, that's why I'm asking for my study materials.
We got your question. Any other questions? Anybody curious about Biosolid?
I mean, I remember, it's not always a very glorious subject, but I remember talking about the process and some of the different options. And so being able to have essentially topsoil is an advantage. And
And we will be one of the first in Kansas.
There are very few places that actually go all the way to Class A. That's correct. There are very few places in Kansas that actually do that. You know, we've looked at it for several communities as an option, but I think you've got a unique situation, I feel like here in Concordia, where you've got people that are really interested in it. And you've got, you know, you have a great relationship with the college to be able to pull, you know, that kind of thing into their programs and their environmental studies. So yeah, it'll be pretty neat to have, and you'll definitely have people coming up to look at it.
And limited space to put the solids if it wasn't Class A.
mhm.
So
I remember the clock was kind of ticking on how much longer we could continue to apply it.
Yeah, this will lift some of the regulations to expand that market, so that's really helpful.
And I'll probably be up to take some from my garden if you don't mind.
I'll put it in your trunk, just
Thank you.
no bags.
No bags. Right in there.
May want to drive the truck up.
Right, yeah, no kidding.
And when we say we're gonna make it available, we're not gonna get into the business of bagging it and selling it. It's just gonna be if you want it involved, you bring your own transport facility. You pull up and Jeremy's guys will figure out how best to get it to you, whether it's already on the ground in storage or whether it's coming out of the dump.
First come, first served basis.
If you've got it, it's yours. If not, wait, there'll be more.
That's right. Any other questions?
You know, I know it's been going on, and I know there's been a lot of hurrying up and waiting, but I am looking forward to moving forward with this. It sounds like that the wheels on the bus are kind of falling off, so
It's time.
it's timely, you know, so I also think that it's been good to be more proactive, because of trying to put this together at this point, it would, I don't even want to venture to guess what it would be if we were trying to start this, what procurement would be, how far out we would be from actual project completion, so.
And just a reminder, for anybody listening, we issued the bonds, we said for just over 4 million. And we got a 1.6 or it said it was just under 2% interest on the bonds too. So I think the timing of it was perfect.
It'd be nice to be done.
We'll get there.
We are.
That's right. All right. Very good. Well, thank you all very much for your time.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you in person.
Yeah, good to see you in person. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
Chief's here, so be sure to drive the speed limit, at least till I get
I
out
will
of
get
town.
with you.
Moving on to the action agenda, minutes of the October 6th, 2021.
I moved to approve the minutes of October 6th, 2021. Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Belton, second by Commissioner Hash to approve the minutes of the October 6th, 2021 meeting. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. She's moving on to appropriation ordinance number 19.
I wanted to make a comment on that. Benish, first off, we apologize for the report. I mean, it's not normal looking and it will be different than this, but we were in a crunch to try to get anything and it's been fun switching software.
I hear that
So-
from almost anybody who goes through a software change.
I know it'll never happen again when I'm here.
I'm not sure how to take that.
It's not happening for at least 30 years.
I'm glad to hear that. I wasn't sure which way to interpret it.
Okay, so anyway, Benish, the amount got keyed incorrectly for, the total would be $46,848.01, and it has $473,325.88. And that was just taking the wrong amount off of the invoice. It was keyed as the total project. So that is the change when you're talking about approving the whole thing. But that's the only problem that we found, so.
So we want to ask that you approve the appropriation ordinance as amended to approve the correct amount for Benish so that we can go ahead and issue the check this week.
Yes, and it will be voided and reissued. We don't even know how to do that yet, but that's happening tomorrow.
I move to approve appropriation ordinance number 19 as amended.
The move by Commissioner Hash, second by Commissioner Wentz to approve appropriation ordinance number 19 as amended. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to ordinance 2021-3183, Uniform Public Offense Code.
It's that time of the year again. We need to, I know it seems odd that we're adopting this stuff 2021 when we're almost into November, but that's how they get the books to us. So every year we need to adopt the Uniform Public Offense Code and standard traffic offenses. Usually we don't have a whole lot of changes to them. There were some, I wouldn't say significant, but quite a few changes that were made that are actually attached to each ordinance. I think it's just given to you in one there. You'll see, I think it's on page 56, the changes that are made there. So this is just something we have to do every year. So I'd ask that you go ahead and adopt ordinance 2021-3183 and 3184. We'll have to do them separately. The Uniform Public Offense Code and Standard Traffic Ordinance.
I move to approve ordinance 2021-3183.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hutchinson, seconded by Commissioner Wentz to approve ordinance 2021-3183. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to ordinance 2021-3184, the standard traffic ordinance.
I move to approve ordinance 2021-3184.
It's been moved by Commissioner Wentz, second by Commissioner Belden to approve ordinance 2021-3184. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the Planning Commission appointments.
November 1, Cheryl and Mike Gallagher's terms on the Planning Commission will expire. Mike, we did get Mike's expression of interest this morning in the deposit box. He was on vacation. I usually put up a reminder a month ahead of on my computer a month ahead of the time when the terms are going to be up, and I sent out a little reminder notice, a letter. I sent him a couple letters and a couple emails and left him a couple messages. And yesterday called me and said they'd been in an area with their RV that they can't get self-service. So, but he was willing to serve again. He did turn in. I don't know if Stacy got that to you through an email or something here, but we have it. So I would just recommend you reappoint both of them to another term.
I move to appoint Cheryl and Mike Gallagher to the planning commission.
It's been moved by Commissioner Belden, second by Commissioner Wentz to reappoint Cheryl Lanu and Mike Gallagher to the Planning Commission. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
We are 2 members short, so Toby or Zero for Planning Commission. Thank you. Put out the word for him.
Managers report.
Mayor and Commissioners, we did solicit proposals for a housing study. Recall that we talked about partnering with Concordia for the payment of a housing study that would serve just the Concordia area proper. And this would help us to understand better our inventory of housing, as well as give us a market analysis that would guide us in our decisions toward the future. And so we did solicit proposals. We received 2 proposals back by the deadline. We also talked with another company who was interested, but they no longer submit proposals because they get enough business by word of mouth referral. So they said if we didn't get your proposals to go back and visit with them, they'd be happy to visit with us and negotiate an item. So we're assembling a committee right now. Hope to have the recommended proposal to you by next commission meeting. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Both of them said that they could probably have us the proposal back by next July or August. So it is going to be a time-consuming process. Talked with Bruno, and we definitely want to make sure that we have the results of that housing study back before we proceed with an update to the comprehensive plan, which should have been updated probably last year, but the housing study is a huge chunk of that comprehensive plan. So we want to make sure we have updated information for that. Plus, we wanted to wait until we had all the data back from the 2020 census before we proceeded, and that data is mostly available right now as well. The other thing I'd like to ask is for you to set a date for my evaluation for this year. I know last year we ended up waiting until it was January before we ended up getting it done, so I'm going to kind of try to beat that this year. We have an evaluation document that we used last year. I sent it out to you. Would ask for comments back if you want to change any of it or if you think it's okay. But would like to get that document to you, give you time to take a look at it, to provide feedback, and then to assemble with you guys together, and then to bring me in for the formal evaluation. I'd like to have that done before the end of this year if we can. So if we could look at our calendars and see what would be an appropriate date, I would appreciate it.
You want to set that date now?
And last year we did it during a regular commission meeting, which is perfectly okay.
So I would think, my personal thought is that we can maybe make some modifications to the document. I think that there were some questions or sections that ended up not being as fruitful as maybe we had thought last year, but generally speaking, use the same. So I can take a look at that and tweak it however we need to. I would still like to follow up and send it out to department heads. So to give ample time to complete that. So I would think that by next commission meeting, can have any modifications made to the evaluation form so that department heads can receive that. So that'd be the first of, so then hopefully have them received. So we had everything completed by the second meeting of the year. Does that give us sufficient time?
Second meeting of December.
The December, sorry.
Yeah, that'd be
Within the
December
year.
15th.
So we essentially have 4 meetings.
Right.
Right, so if the evaluation goes out next meeting, we have honestly 2 weeks. So we should have them back by the second meeting in November, process for the first meeting in November, and then finalized for the second meeting. That sound like a workable timeline?
So set the evaluation for December 15th and work toward those milestones in the phase. Right. Okay, thank you. That's all that I had to share, unless you have any questions for me.
Notes real quick, make sure though. Department heads? You could all take your turn to really help me. Stay organized. All right. Marcia.
Well, the only thing I had somebody tell me that 4 of the lights are out on the parking lot behind the theater. So drawn in here. So,
We'll get that information to you.
otherwise, I don't have anything.
I had somebody tell me that, I don't know if it would be the water department or the street crew, did some repair work in an alley not far from the cemetery, so I think it's between 16th and 17th Street, maybe, or 17th and 18th, I don't remember which, but anyway, they were grateful. It has needed to be done for a long time.
Nothing for me. So at this point, we would entertain a motion to adjourn for a study session to discuss CK public transportation.
I move to adjourn to study session to discuss location transportation.
So moved by Commissioner Belton, second by Commissioner Hutchinson to adjourn for a study session. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. Do I need to take a break? Power and prayer?
Yeah.
All right.
Staff, you guys. So we sent a letter of request and our